Welcome to Studio Hockey. My name is Ernst Baart, and I am joined by my co-host in this podcast, Jaspreet Singh. Studio Hockey is all about both domestic and international hockey, and together we make sure that we both look at our game of hockey from a European and a more Asian perspective. Our guest for today is Keely Dunn. Welcome, Keely. We meet again.
Hello,
Keely.
friends. How are you?
Keely's from Canada. She's a former international umpire, but the world of hockey will know you as the force behind FHumpires.com. The umpire whisperer who helps umpires become better and teaches all of us how to interpret the rules and specific hockey situations through social media. Can you tell us a little bit how that you got involved in hockey and how that led to umpiring and where umpiring has brought you around the world before we dive a little bit deeper into the reason for FH umpires?
Sure. And hopefully this story won't be too long. Go ahead and give me the fingers to speed it up if you need to. Um, Being from Canada, obviously, it's not a big sport there. And I didn't know anything about what we call field hockey until I started high school. So in Canada, that in Alberta, that's around 14 years old for me. And I had just gone through a pretty difficult time in my life where I lost a lot of things, including my mother died from cancer. And I was really needing something to anchor myself to and something new and different and a way to make friends at this new high school. And I saw the poster for field hockey tryouts and I thought, oh, maybe all the popular girls are going to be too busy with volleyball. So maybe I'll actually make this team. And I did.
Mm.
And it became this thing that I started doing that I didn't know anything about, but through practice and trying hard and being persistent, I grew in the sport, and that gave me a really great sense of accomplishment and pride, and that's just sort of how it tumbled on as I got older and older.
Mm.
And then umpiring, well, I started doing it because one of the senior members of my new club team, when I was about 18, handed me the whistle one night and said, "You're going to do this for me," because she didn't want to umpire the game. And I said, "Okay." And I went out there and I did it. And back then, it was a good way to make money. So I was making enough money doing ladies' league and men's league matches to pay for all my fees and to pay for food and and all sorts of things that I needed help with. So that was the way I got into umpiring. And
What
then
age?
eventually,
What age?
sorry, go ahead.
What age?
I started umpiring at about 17, 18,
Okay. Yeah.
and doing adult club stuff, which isn't obviously very high level in Calgary, but it was there.
Yeah.
And then I got recruited to go into, I guess you would call it high performance umpiring. When I was at senior nationals one year, I finally scored a goal. So I was 29, Ernst, and I scored my very first goal for Alberta.
Never too late. Never too
Oh,
late.
I'm right. And it was, I think, the fifth goal in a 5-2 win against a B side from another province. And I practically ripped my shirt over my head and threw it around. I was so excited. And this guy in black trousers walked up to me after the game who I'd never
Oh,
met before. And he said, "You need to stop this playing malarkey and start umpiring." And I was like, "You've never seen me umpire. How do you know I'm a good umpire?" And he said, "I just watched you cheat for 60 minutes. I think you're going to be a very good umpire." And that's how I got recruited into doing national level umpiring, and then very quickly I went international. So that's
mm,
kind of how the whole story goes
yeah.
together.
And what were the first steps on the international field of hockey then?
Well, I think it depends on where you're at, but what they ended up being for me was I got sent on a tour with the Canadian women's team going to Scotland and Wales. And
Mm.
so that was really fun. That was about 2001, I think it was. That's a long time ago, eh? And so that I got my first taste. And this is really fun actually, because my very first umpire manager who came out to watch me in those matches in Scotland was none other than Martin Madden's father, Craig. And
Okay.
so he was the first one who ever gave me feedback outside my country, and I was just in awe of this guy because he was so cool and buying me pints and all that stuff. And he didn't scare me too badly, so I thought, "Okay, maybe this thing's for me," but, yeah, that was really fun to be able to tell Martin that story a few years a few years ago. So that's how it started for me. And then I got my first appointment to the Central American and Caribbean Games in 2002. And that's where I earned my international badge doing a senior level tournament. And off I went from there.
Yeah. What tournaments did you umpire around the world?
Oh, goodness. Well, I did
The
win a
highlights. The
non-concessional.
highlights.
The highlights. Okay.
Yeah.
I did a European Under 21 Championship in Dublin in, I think that was 2006. And that was great because that was my first final. And it was very exciting because it was Netherlands and Germany and
Oh
very,
wow.
very high quality hockey. Really enjoyed that. I've done 2 Junior World Cups. I've done an Olympic qualifier in Antwerp, a World Cup qualifier in Kazan, Russia, back when they were allowed to play. And yeah, those are some of the good ones, but it's interesting because the big tournaments are their own sort of experiences, but I've had really amazing times at the smaller PAF events that, I spent a lot of times at. So, really positive experiences at a lot of places.
Mm-hmm. Jaspreet.
Keely, it's not the first time we are interacting, right? But it's quite formal now. Means earlier we would reach out to you, ask to explain a certain infringement we found questionable in a match, or just to discuss about a deep-seated rule in the FIH book. Uh, but this is quite formal with an audience waiting to hear us.
Yeah.
Feel
Yeah.
a little odd.
They're wondering if I can talk about anything other than rules, and the question is probably no, because we're going to talk about a lot of them, aren't we?
You created FH umpires several years ago for the umpires in our game for hockey. I
Mhm.
noticed that first line of your mission statement on the FH umpires website, which says umpiring is broken. It kind of
Mhm.
I, it took me aback because I couldn't get it. I have visited your FH umpires website quite often, but this is the first line, and I noticed it for the first time while I was researching for this podcast. Explain it to me, please.
Well, as a first line of a mission statement, obviously it's a little bit clickbaity and a little bit controversial, but I do tend to take a very blunt approach with the things that I talk about, and I feel like we need to shock ourselves as a community out of complacency. I think we are the last element of the hockey community to move forward and to catch up with the modern game. And it's not because we're jerks and we don't want to. It's a combination of all kinds of factors, mostly to do with professionalism and things like that. But I think we need to take this very, very seriously because I think we have a very important part to play in the progress of our sport. And without us coming forward and getting into the pace and keeping up with the players and the coaches and the improvements that they're making, we're not going to be doing our jobs. And I think that's what everybody is here to do when we are in the third team is we want to do our jobs really well. We want to serve the game and we want to feel like we're contributing positively. So that's sort of where I start. And then everything else comes about support, but really shaking up the system. I'm very much about changing the way we do things.
How many like-minded umpires you have come across who think that umpiring is broken?
I think a lot of us do. I think anybody who's under the age of 40 definitely feels that way.
Not just
We're
umpires.
not just yeah, I have no problem finding fans outside of umpiring, but I think that there is a growing sense, a growing awareness when we watch the sport that we've not done our job in keeping up, and but but that understanding has lagged, and then the steps that we need to take in order to catch up also lag because we lack the analysis tools, the professionalism, the time, the money to do that kind of work. And that's why I'm here. That's why I do what I do is to try to close that gap and try to initiate the changes that we need to make.
Yeah. I'm sure, Keely, that most national associations and governmental bodies in our sport have all kinds of programs in place to teach starting umpires and even experienced umpires the tricks of the trade. So what exactly is the added value of a platform like yours, both for umpires, for coaches, for players, for fans, but I suppose mostly for umpires?
Yeah. It's interesting because it took me a long time to figure that out myself, to be honest. Part of what I was doing when I started out way back in 2006 was just trying to promulgate rules, changes, promotions of umpires to different levels, appointments that they were getting, activities that they were doing, ways that they were impacting their communities, and just trying to publicize what we were doing because there was nothing out there in social media at the time. And probably for a good decade, I don't think there was anything else. But what I started realizing is that people were reaching out to me and they were asking the kind of questions that Jazz alluded to earlier. They want to know more about, well, how do I break this rule down? How do we figure out what the right decision is here? How can we do this better in the future? And I started realizing that that training component is really missing. So when you talk about what national associations provide, absolutely, they're very good at starting. Many associations are very good at starting umpires out on their journeys. And those aren't the people I'm necessarily focused on because that really is something that can be served on that level, en masse, efficiently. However, after that point, what we lack are the numbers of people who can devote the time to provide coaching and education the way that I do. It's that lack of professionalism that I'm talking about. So the fact that I do this for a living means that 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, I am dedicated to getting better as an umpire coach, to understanding the game better, to understand how to coach umpires to the best of their abilities, whatever those abilities might be. And that's something that no or very few national associations have anybody doing. So that's the gap that I'm filling. What surprised me was who I have been drawn to help. So I thought I was going to go out there and it was going to be the smaller hockey nations like my own or Chile or um, or smaller Western European countries. But no, it was England. They're my biggest market. They're 80% of my clients, and they have one of the best organized umpiring systems in the world. So why is that? It's still because we have this gap between professional trainers, professional coaches, and the people who need their support.
Yeah.
Keely, you just mentioned that you found people reaching out to you asking about rules, and you figured out that there is a market for that, perhaps. And you were visible on social media, perhaps because of that reason. Quite often, um, uh, with your videos from game situations, explaining the ins and outs uh, of specific decisions. These days, it seems you are more focused within the walls of your own community of umpires. Was that a deliberate choice? And if yes, why? What should be done by you or others to educate our fans, coaches, and players to better understand the umpires? Because, as we say, that it's a thankless job.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, two big questions there. Um, my step back from live streaming in particular wasn't really deliberate at the time. A lot of it came through the fact that last September I decided to come over to England and see if I could make a go of living here. And uh, I had a lot of things to learn. It was very well, as you can imagine, it was a big change. My learning curve was a sheer cliff, and one of the biggest problems I ran into was the really bad internet here. Like, what? I don't understand how this tiny little island could go conquer half the world, but they can't figure out how to get high-speed internet to all their locations. Anyway, rant over. But I really did run into a lot of technical difficulties when I would plan to do something and then it just wouldn't work out. So things got sporadic and it took me some time to figure out an alternative. The other half to that was now that I was in England, I was spending so much more time in person working with my clients and working with other people, volunteering for the National League and volunteering for the South Central Association here and for the West. And so spending the time to, 8 hours to go drive somewhere, spend a couple hours with the umpires beforehand, watch their match, do their debrief, and then drive home, things kind of I have only got those 24 hours a day and 7 days a week. I don't have more than that. So I needed to figure out a new sort of balance. So I know the two of you have noticed that in the last week, I figured out, hey, I could do basically a little tiny part of a What Up Wednesday every day. So I've started putting out singular clips. So one scenario from a match. And Euros is a perfect opportunity to do that, obviously. And so I've been publishing those. The response has been fabulous. People love them because I have to be concise. And that's not really one of my superpowers, Ernst. You're laughing. I think that's really mean of you. But yeah, so I think I found another tool. But what I miss from that is the interaction with the community. So much of what I've learned about being able to explain rules and really just understanding them myself has come through interacting with people and having to meet their objections or learn from the things that they've taught me and say, oh, actually, that is a better way to explain it, or that is a good point you've made. So I
Yeah.
do miss out on that part, but that comes from my Discord. That comes from the community that I haven't been spending a lot of time with over the last few years. So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
all working out.
Also, yeah. But in all honesty, I was very happy to see that you were a little bit back on social media, because and that is often one of my criticisms towards the community of field hockey umpires, locally but internationally also, is and I guess that's human. I think all other communities will do this as well. You stay in your own community. You talk
Yeah.
to your peers, you talk to other umpires, and you, in my opinion, don't talk enough to the others that are a part of our game. Um,
Yeah.
but so, and I think that social media, and especially the way that you did it before and started now doing it again in a different way, but again out there in social media, I think it's a wonderful tool to reach out of that community of umpires alone. And I
Yeah.
think, and I know that you will agree that we all need to be educated about the rules, and know better how to
Yeah.
play the game.
Yeah.
Now,
Absolutely.
so, but
Absolutely.
we often have heated debates, sometimes in private WhatsApp messages, sometimes a little bit more public. But you know that I, like all others involved in hockey, I know we need our umpires. Um, Can you name one thing that should be done by the powers that be to allow for umpires to catch up to the speed of modern game? But also name one other thing that umpires need to do themselves to improve and catch up with the speed.
The one thing that the powers that be can do for umpiring, pay us. That's it. I'm sorry, but everything starts from there. You can't have people volunteer and spend the time that they do to be amateurs who come out one day on a weekend and spend 8-10 hours to do a match and then expect the level of performance and professionalism from them when they cannot devote any more time to that pursuit because they have real jobs and they have real mortgages and they have real costs of living to keep up with and they have real families and all these things that they're trying to balance. If umpires can't devote more time to their craft, they cannot get better. It's pretty basic. And I know that there's a lot of backlash on that concept. I hear it a lot here in England where people say, well, but we do it for the love of the game.
No.
Well, you can do that if you're rich. Congratulations. All the rich people get to umpire. But what about everybody else? Who are we missing from the umpiring community because they can't afford to do it? We're missing the young people. We're missing people from diverse backgrounds, from disadvantaged backgrounds. We're missing women who are often needing to still shoulder the burden of childcare and home care in their families. We are missing out on so many people who could be contributing to the sport, and it needs to start with money.
Absolutely. But then, what do you do yourself as an umpire?
We invest that money back into our own development. So pay people like me to train you. pay for really good gym memberships and personal training, pay for coaching courses to help you mentally prepare for matches better, pay for radio equipment and better shoes and like everything that you need. That money that you start earning, you need to reinvest into what you're doing. And that should also help give you the time so you can just watch more hockey. We all need to watch more hockey, all of us. We need to be just as obsessed as people are about those other sports, and get really just into it. We need to go to events and sit our butts in the stands and pay the money to sit there and watch this amazing sport instead of just sitting at home and getting mad about things.
No, exactly. And one of the things that I always add to that is I think that umpires should partake, well, in the Western European system where we have clubs, they should partake a lot more in training sessions of our first teams. So they should be there every training of the first men's team, every training of the first women's team, maybe even the top youth teams, and partake in the training when there are small-sided games, when there are little games to be played. Pick up that whistle and umpire more on the field. It's not just watching the game; it's also doing the craft that you love more to get better. I think, but yeah, fully agree. You need to get paid for that. You need some remuneration for that. Yep.
Keely, you mentioned one point here. Means apart from the money, you said that we need to watch more hockey. We need to be at the games. Maybe we need to have geo blocks being removed, and everybody should be able to watch it for free. These kind of things. But then there are, I think, sometimes there are surveys that are done which say that after football, field hockey is the second most popular game in the world. Means how, from where does that come from? Have you encountered anything like that? Because we are at one point we are saying we are not able to watch hockey as much as we want to, and then other point we're saying it's the second world. It's not part of the script. This question is not part of the script, but just came to my mind.
I love it, Jazz. Go with it. Go with it. I think we're in this weird space. There's a word that's escaping me right now. That we're in between things. We've got this myth of where we are in terms of a spectator sport that just isn't quite there yet. And we missed out, like back in the day, we missed out on the broadcast window to get our sport on TV. Okay. And in America, it was basketball, baseball, football. They took all the time and they got it. Over here in England, it's sports ball and cricket. Okay. And there's only so many hours on terrestrial or even satellite linear television that you can get into. And we are struggling against a tide of incredible choices out there in the live stream world, in the internet only space. And that is going to be hard. But as a community, we have to understand that it's got to come from us. We have to be the people who, instead of going to watch Chelsea and Man United on a Saturday, we should be going and watching our sport on a Saturday.
Yeah.
And we can't complain that, our sports, so we don't have it on TV, we don't have these things. We have to show the advertisers that they want our eyeballs, because our eyeballs are on our sport, but they're not. They're on the other sports. So that comes from us. And if we don't want to do it, well, then we can't complain, right? We can't complain.
Absolutely. And in all honesty, Jazz, I think that a lot of the numbers that we're seeing out there claiming that we are number 2 or number 3 sports worldwide are absolutely fabricated. And was about to say another word. I'm going to try and keep it polite, but those numbers are just not correct. And it's not because the numbers are there on Facebook or whatever social media platform that we should take that to heart. We all love our sport. We all want it to be the second or even the first in the world. It's not. Yeah. It's not even close to the top 10. We are a small sport, and we need to take the steps that a small sport needs to take to survive and thrive and grow. And that doesn't mean that we should not believe the fairy tales people tell us.
And I have to say, we've been a little bit probably negative about how things are going. I think the positive part of all of this is that there have been strides that have been made. For example, the revived Watch.hockey platform is doing much better than the past iterations. That's starting to come along. There are federations out there and national associations that are putting out great social media content. Like the Pan Am hockey accounts, if you're not following them on Instagram, you're really missing out because they do an amazing job of showcasing the sport and showcasing those players and the joy and the community and all those things. And I mean, obviously the bigger associations do too, but when you see these things, it fills me with some hope that things are going to change and we're going to get that momentum. But what I want to make sure is that umpires don't get left behind out of that mix, because traditionally we haven't treated umpires as part of the professional setup.
Let's go back a little bit. Let me take you back to your university days. I just studied during my research that you earned a law degree from the University of Calgary in Canada, of course. Never thought of practicing law as a profession, or was your love for hockey a bit too strong? And how does it help in your day-to-day with FHM?
It's funny. So when I started first year law, I was the only varsity athlete in law school at the time. And University of Calgary had very small, exclusive class sizes. I think we were 76 people a year or something like that. But I was the only varsity athlete, and my squad, the Dino squad that year, was an incredibly intelligent squad. We had, I think, 11 of our 16 athletes were academic All-Canadians. And so CBC, our National Broadcast Association, came out and they did a story on the team. And they followed me into my first year of law school into contracts, which was a terrible choice because the contracts prof had a field day making fun of me for the next, 14 months. And I remember being asked what I wanted to be, like what I wanted to do with my law degree. And I said, I want to be a judge. And I kind of am. I've fulfilled that in a pretty obtuse way. Now, I did practice law for a couple of years. I found the profession to be really, really grueling for not being able to do what I wanted to do with it, which was I wanted to be an appellate lawyer, and it just wasn't satisfying to me. And there was a lot of other things that deeply interested me, like technology, and the umpiring came in. I was about 29, 30 when I started umpiring internationally. So I had already moved out of the practice of law and I was doing technology consulting at the time. And that industry gave me the flexibility to be able to travel the way that I needed to. And it gave me the time away and the remote aspect because the internet and all that sort of thing. So that really helped. I don't think I would have been able to take advantage of the opportunities that were offered to me if I had stayed in the legal profession. Now, how does it help me? Well, it's trained me how to think and how to analyze the wording of a rule and to be able to come up with a logical way to apply it to the things that I see. Now, it's not the end all be all. Legal interpretation principles only take you so far. You have to mix that in with understanding the spirit of the game and emotions and empathy and skill levels and those sort of things. All those things come into the mix. But when you have a foundation like this, and there are a lot of really, really good umpires in the world who have come from the legal profession, it gives you a bit of a leg up and that sort of thing. It's also made me really good at arguing. And I do that a lot.
Yeah. But
Ernst.
but I absolutely agree. I see a lot of umpires who come from the legal education who are doing better than the average, than the other umpires in my opinion. It's not a scientific research method, but I believe it helped. Yeah. Hockey in your home of Canada. in your home country, your original home country. We know that you're in England now, but hockey in Canada is often mistaken for its younger sibling, ice hockey. Uh, how do you see a path to growing field hockey in Canada and your neighbors in that continent? Because you do things differently from us here in Europe and from Jaspreet's friends in India.
Mm, yeah. Oh, what is the pathway to growth? God, that's a really difficult question because one of the reasons I'm here is because I'm not sure what that pathway is.
Mm.
And I wanted to be in a place where I felt more confident about the growth of the sport. The biggest problem that we have is something that just can't be fixed with more funding or a wave of the wand, and that's just geography. So every country in the world that deals with this, when your population centers are massively spread out, it's just too expensive to get together and play all the time. So over the years, we have lost in Canada, we lost our senior national competition in 2014. We lost our under 21 national competition. I think the year after that, it got removed from the Canada Summer Games, and then we just stopped playing it. We have had at times have an under 23 competition. That's gone. All we have now nationally is an under 18 and under 16 or under 15 national competition in terms of getting
Are
everybody
these,
together.
yeah, but are these replaced by more regional district competitions or local more, or just abandoned?
Well, so in Vancouver, they've replaced the senior national competition essentially with what they call the MVPL, I believe. And it's a very high quality competition. The national team athletes who are centralized there do partake, and it's good stuff, but it is just regionalized, and the whole you can't grow a sport if you only have one center playing, and that's what we've had unfortunately for a couple of decades now. And if you look at the results from our recent Pan Am Cup, from what's happening at the Junior Pan Am Cup, we're in trouble. We're in real trouble. We've been punching above our weight for years, and our luck has run out because the players have retired off. We're not replacing them with the right grassroots development. We just
Mm.
don't have the numbers. So, what is the solution? I really don't know, but it has to come from the sport becoming more popular on a global stage that inspires more participants in Canada to get on board with what I think is the best sport in the world.
Hmm. Yeah. With your neighbors in the US, do you have any specific insights there? How are they dealing with that? And are they on the way to grow the sport?
Well, it's interesting because I've been using the word professionalism quite a bit, and there is an aspect of professionalism in the US setup in terms of their collegiate playing system. So the women's side is served to a certain extent. There's a pipeline from their youth development into high school and then into the collegiate system. And there's a lot of opportunities for players who are female to play at all kinds of, scholarship and semi-scholarship situations. And that provides people with a means to, gain an education that maybe they wouldn't otherwise be able to afford and all that sort of thing. But the problem is now their geography comes into it because after collegiate, there's nothing. There is very little in the way of adult. There is some adult club competition, but my friends down there tell me it's not very serious and it's not very high level. So they're missing a trick because they lose just a ton of players once they graduate. Now, that doesn't even talk about, the absence of real programs for male athletes.
Mm.
So they've got their own particularized issues that revolve around that. And what they need to do is to call upon the same equity systems that have helped women achieve what they have in sports in the US, and to be able to bring up the men's side of the game in that same way so that they have their own university teams and their own funding and things like that. And they have to overcome that ridiculous stigma that hockey's a girls' sport.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, Jas, that would make you laugh because I'm pretty sure that people in your country don't see it that way.
Chess.
Yeah, coming back to means your Canada days. Of course, you're in England now, but um, y- we have a lot of expats in Canada, a big population.
Hmm.
Some many from my community as well there, and they are big time into hockey. They have their local clubs. They even have their AstroTurf fields, means which they have funded themselves.
Yep.
Tell me a little bit about how do they conduct these clinics, these programs, and often tournaments as well. Where do the funds come from? Do they generate it among themselves, or they have some sponsors, somebody people from India helping them? How does it happen?
Yeah. So, and please, like, forgive me for anybody who knows better about this because they're intimately involved with the competitions back in Canada. But my understanding from watching these competitions that have grown up, and there's the Kings Club tournament is one of the big ones in Vancouver that attracts top international players at
Yeah.
times from around the world. They'll float in. I know Sevi Van Ask came over, and there's been a bunch of really amazing players coming in because the money is there. They also pay the umpires at that tournament quite well. So that also helps raise the standards there. And I think that they've been able to achieve that because their their community of businesses locally who are connected with that community supports the events. So for some reason, the Indian or Pakistani or Bangladeshi business communities are able to support those events, but why can't we get businesses that are not from those communities supporting other hockey events? I don't know why it's so hard. And there's something that we need to learn. We need to hire these folks and teach us how to do it because clearly we're missing some pretty big tricks.
Yeah. Okay.
Coming
Yep.
Sorry, I would want to go back to Keely's comment where she said that you would laugh when people in your side of the world say this is just a women's sport. You had me thinking there actually. So I was thinking about something when Ernst just prompted me that it's your turn. So I was just thinking. I had a few players in the past telling me that when people say there is gender equality, there is women game is treated at par with the men's game. Means off the record, I have often been told that it's not true. It's true possibly only for TV, only for to be printed in a newspaper or anywhere else. But
Hmm.
actually, it is not true. So that at times hurts you because our women went on to finish fourth in Tokyo, um, which was a creditable performance, and they need to be given all the credit that should be given to them. Uh, Unfortunately, they couldn't build on it. The women's game has fallen a level below since then in India in terms of performances. But coming back to the point of gender equality,
Hmm.
when people say that it's more in for the media, more for TV, more for print, do you agree with that?
Well, when you say more forward, you mean that there's some sort of appearance being put on for public consumption that doesn't reflect the reality? Is that what you mean, Jess?
Yes.
Yeah. Um, I think it's a lot more complicated than that. I think that part of what we need to do is project the positivity and lead by example. When you look at what has happened with, say, women's football, um, in England and in other European countries, what's happened with the women's soccer over in the States with their professional leagues, with women's basketball over there, women's volleyball over there, women's ice hockey over there. It's incredible what those sports have been able to do. And it's the unconditioned, it's the driving positivity about what these sports and what these athletes do provide to spectators in terms of entertainment and joyous fun and role modeling and all the things that we're looking for from sport, and they have achieved that success. So I don't have a problem with us talking about how great women's hockey is internationally. We have to keep pushing that. We have to keep talking about it. We have to keep it visible because we've seen it. It does make a difference. Things will change. Just because we're not quite there yet doesn't mean that we're not going in the right direction. And I think we can give ourselves a little bit of time. This is a big culture shift that we're in the midst of. And we get a little bit sort of myopic and thinking, well, it's not happening right now. And, look at what happened at this tournament and look at this. And I think we can just sort of relax and understand that it's going to take us another 5, 10, maybe 15 years to get to the point that, say, women's football has gotten to.
Yeah. And to add to that point, in all honesty, I think, Jazz, in the countries where hockey is being played and not just watched as a professional sport, in the countries where it's played, I'm talking the Netherlands, in Belgium, in Germany, in the UK, in Australia, and in New Zealand. Argentina is a little bit different there, I think, but in those countries, there is equality. There is women, 50-50, women, men playing the sport.
I'm saying it's not there in India. I'm not saying that they're
Yes.
not there in India. Efforts are being made. Means as Keely said, it might take another 5, 10, 15 years to reach a point where we want to actually reach. But I'm just saying that uh, it's sometimes misused in a way to
Yes.
get more mileage on TV, on media. So that thing somewhere hurts the players per se, that why we are being used to gain mileage. If this is actually there, it should be actually there. It should not be just projected.
Mhm. Okay,
Yeah.
bringing our talk back to umpiring. Unless, Keely, you want to add something there. But how can we convince more competitive players of a strong level to become an umpire? We've seen the example of, I'm naming a Belgian umpire here, Laurien Delforce here in Belgium, who became a top umpire in the world. She was at 3 Olympic finals in a row. Uh, Largely, in my opinion, because she was playing high-level hockey until recently herself. So what needs to be done to convince more players to take up that whistle and go for a high level of umpiring career?
Yeah. Aside from the big one that I talked about earlier,
Yes.
that would certainly help. But I think this notion that we are this community apart and separate and um, weird and difficult, and we're not fun and we're not keen and passionate and engaged, that's what we have to change. And hopefully I've done maybe a little bit of damage, but maybe I've helped to try to change the appearance of who an umpire is, how we behave. I mean, sometimes I swear on my live streams and I've got these weird glasses on and I talk colloquially sometimes, and then at other times I'm really pompous. And I just try to get some personality injected and to model that we can be human beings who occasionally make mistakes online and make them out loud for everybody, and to just get more human with the people who we're serving eventually. And I think that will do a lot. And just the diversity that we need to have in order to entice those people. I do a lot of I spend a lot of time with junior development here in the UK, and especially in the South Central area. And when I go out there, I'm getting older, so that's not really helping, but I used to be cool and I used to be, a little bit younger, and I'm going to spit out a cliche, but hockey is for everybody. And umpiring is for everybody who wants to give it a shot.
Besides not being the most popular job in hockey, umpiring, as we are talking about, it's dangerous as well. You don't have umpires wearing protective gears. You believe
Mhm.
going forward, I wanted to ask you: you believe it's time for umpires to wear protective gears, maybe face masks, gum guards throughout the game? Do you see it happening, or you want to see it happening?
Glasses.
Ernst, you're so funny. An earpiece so that they can listen to you tell them what the calls are? Yeah.
Yes.
Um, do I think it's time for umpires to be wearing more protective equipment? No, I don't. I think that the number of injuries that we have, remember, we're in this age of social media where the few times that we've seen umpires get injured, Ben's injury was horrific. It
Yeah.
was absolutely horrible. And it was a complete fluke. It was a deflection off a drag flick, And, you know, and I mean, I have no end of sympathy for him for what he went through and how hard he had to work to get back.
And he's
But
back.
that's and he's back, and he's very back. And
Yeah.
and it, but that was one situation out of so many. The difficulty I have if you're gonna ask umpires to wear gum shields, I mean, players don't listen to what we have to say anyway, and now we're gonna try to talk through mouth guards. And if we're wearing face masks, our ability to see the things that apparently we're already still missing is gonna be further impeded by having, vision, obstacles right in front of us. That tiny split second of a blink, and, Ernst, you and I talked about this recently, can change everything
Yes.
about what we perceive and what we understand and what our brains fill in and what we believe that we've seen. So I'm I'm not a fan of adding more equipment to provide safety. What I am a fan of is understanding if there are elements of our game that don't really serve the overall spirit of what is great hockey, that maybe we can change, and it would make things more safe for everybody involved.
Mhm. We often ask the players so how they plan for an after hockey career, because we know it doesn't pay as much to play hockey to survive for the rest of your life. The lucky ones who are playing at the international level can make a decent living while they are playing. But yeah, you do not retire on your earnings from hockey. Um, I'm supposing it's the same for, well, even worse probably for the top umpires, who also sacrifice a lot of time for their international careers. So how do they deal with that balance between career and the extended hobby of a semi-pro umpire?
Yeah. Um, it's a good question, and in my opinion and in my experience, the reason that the umpires who get to the top are able to get there is because they are able to modify, or they're able to accommodate with the career pathways that they have, their intense travel schedules. They have accommodating employers. There's a lot of teachers in international umpiring, which give them certain time off, and also the spirit of schooling tends to say, "Oh, you're giving back to the community in sport. We're going to give you this time off," and that sort of thing. But but we still fit it in around our careers. There are very few people who give up careers in order to umpire.
Mm.
I don't think many do whatsoever. I think I'm one of the few who came pretty close to that in a lot of respects. So I think when you say that, what are our careers after umpiring, it's okay, well, now we don't have to figure out, where we're going to get our time off, and we can actually spend time with our families on holidays instead. That's that's the life after hockey. And then to try to entice those people who have already given up so much to stay in the sport as perhaps umpire managers and coaches, that's the other challenge, because that's an even less supported endeavor, less professional, and that sort of thing. So that's the space that I'm occupying as a professional and trying to make into something that people can get paid to do, so that we can keep our top minds, our top experienced people in our sport, so they can give back to the next generation.
Mhm.
Fair point. And since we have an umpire, former umpire, and an umpiring expert with us, we can't let you go without talking about rules, which have often been debated. We have debated over WhatsApp chats. We have debated personally over calls and all the time. Um, which means the rules have changed quite often. Means this was a question that you guys were talking about earlier, but I want to ask it still. Um, Rules keep changing right from the time when the offside rule was changed in the early 90s, if I'm not wrong. Uh, if that rule were to come back, if big if, if it were to come back, obviously it will slow down the pace of the game, and efforts are being made to make it faster, even faster. Whatever needs to be done is the uh, the custodians of the rules are doing that already. But if the offside rule were to come back, which is still part of the football, which hardly changes its rules, opposite to hockey. So, would you be a fan of that? I'm sure you will not be, but still, I wanted to ask that.
I love how you're just, yeah, this is a rhetorical question, Keely, but I want to see how mad I can get you before, we move on to our next question. Offside was taken out in 1996, and it was the best thing that they ever did for our sport. And I don't ever see it coming back. What I really like about our sport, and I have a lot of admiration for the people who decide to go with a rule change, because we have, unlike many other sports, gone through a lot of rule changes. And hey, sometimes they don't work out. The whole anybody touching the ball inside the circle is fine. That was 8 months of chaos, and then the players spoke out, and the folks at the FA said, "Yeah, we hate it too." Then there are things like the rules trial that we're doing right now with the aerial ball at the Pro League. The KNHB has elected to implement that association-wide for the upcoming season. It's been played at various competitions around the world, and it's a smashing success, I think. I think it's been going fabulously, and it's the direction that whole rule concept is moving to. So what I see is us continuing to move forward, and we're not going to take steps back into something like offside 1996. It would be, I can't even imagine having to try to umpire something so crucial without having more people on the pitch and having the ability to review with some technology. And I mean, we don't have the money for Hawkeye the way that top football does. Like it just doesn't happen unless it's the Paris Olympics and they don't talk about it. But we don't have Hawkeye. So yeah, offside, it's a non-starter. It's an absolute non-starter. Thank goodness. But thanks for letting me dash your dreams.
Yeah. But there's also been a lot of chatter lately in a year or so about changing the penalty corner rules because of danger. So what's your take on that?
I've seen a lot of conversations. There was the trial that was going to come out, and then they scuttled it because they realized that the outcry against forcing the ball to go more than 5 meters outside the circle was not going to work out. I don't think that's the answer. And honestly, I find the penalty corner to be one of the least entertaining parts of our game. The fact that it's now dominated by a skill that is not expressed anywhere else on the pitch at any other time, to me, is just a travesty. It really is.
Keely, you're breaking my heart. You're breaking my heart.
I know. At the same time,
this is the 1 minute reel for you too.
So I've seen the experimentations that they did with the what was it, the Super Series, and they did a form of sevens where it was an outnumbered situation starting on the 23. The other defenders had to start on the 23, and then the players are on. Oh no, all the attackers are on the 23. The rest were at the center line, and I talked about it on a very lengthy live stream one day. But I loved that idea because of, first of all, it has the skills that the players are going to be best at. Outnumbered situations, passing, shooting the crap out of the ball, great, and no weird forms of the skill that you can't do any other time. Plus, for the umpires, it takes away a huge burden of rules that are only for that one specific context and all these tiny little details. The fewer decisions that umpires need to make that are impact on the game, the better the game is. So let's just junk that whole thing. I do understand that there are people in the sport that rely on the drag flick for their living. So I am aware of this, and it's in my head, but I still think this is what we need to do as a sport.
No, but I have a different view on that. Apart from the rules part, where I'm not equipped to talk about that, but for me, it is one of the uh, phases of the game that makes our game unique. No other sport has this. This is what makes our game unique. I completely disagree with the fact that with the statement you made that it is a isolated skill that nobody is using apart from that drag flicker. In all honesty, there's the injector, there's the trapper, there's the drag flicker, but it doesn't have to be a drag flick. It can be a pass. It can be a deflection. It can be so many things. So I disagree with that statement. But the rules part is something that makes sense. But in all honesty, for me, it is an element that is makes our sport quite unique and different from other sports. And so, yeah,
I'm
not my
sorry.
favorite one.
I'm sorry, but both the co-hosts have to disagree with Keely here because I
Not the
think
first time, Jazz.
set pieces set pieces are not just set pieces. These are show pieces of our sport, which people come to the edge of the seat to watch, and it's something that makes I agree with Ernst here. It makes something our sport unique. There are a lot of elements. He mentioned most of them: rusher, first rusher, second rusher, the first castle, second castle. There are a lot of elements to it which make it pretty unique. But point taken. We respect each other's point of views. You have your own, so everybody is allowed to. But yeah, let's move on to the next question.
Yeah. So
Your turn.
what rule? Yeah, Keely, what rule is on your own radar to change, and which ones do you think will be changed by FIH next?
I think the rule trial for the aerial is going to be put in place immediately after the World Cup. I don't think they're going to wait very much longer. They just don't. I think it's weird because obviously all of the teams, most of the teams who are involved at the World Cup will be playing that trial, and so they'll already be ready for it. So they could have changed the rule, pretty quickly. But I think they just want to finish the trial out and make sure they gather all the data that they can. But I mean, there's just no reason for anything not to change there. But I love that, and I think I still hear people talking about how we should ban aerials from entering to the D, and I heartily disagree with that because the danger aspect that we were so concerned about, because the defenders were having to wait until deemed control happened, and that gave the separation, and all of a sudden they were victims of half volleys into their face and all those sort of things. We haven't seen any of those since the trial has come into play. And I've watched a ton of hockey with this stuff, and it is so much safer now. And I think the defenders feel it's a lot more fair, but the attackers are still able to express their skill. There's still the creativity of being able to go to the air to get the ball into that deep zone. I don't think that should get taken away whatsoever. We do have to get better at calling those more accurately, yes, but I think that that rule is absolutely in like Flynn. And then with more time, we'll get closer and closer to this utopia where we don't have to have an aerial rule whatsoever because people are just going to understand. There's a lot of rules in our rule book that were in place and just disappeared out of the rule book when it became just common understanding. And people don't understand, well, why is it that people only use one side of the stick, or they tackle from these places and don't do that? It's because, well, that used to be in the rule book, but it doesn't need to be anymore because the community gets it.
Mm.
That's both powerful and also dangerous at the same time, because that means newcomers don't understand what we're doing. But we can have our little things, right? We can have our mysteries. We can have our special knowledge, and other people can come in and learn it in time. The intrigue of our sport is a good thing.
What's your view on the Asian level of umpiring and how the countries here in Asia, means Malaysia, India, Pakistan, Korea, China, they can get more top level umpires? Maybe an exchange program inside Asia, outside Asia, with Europe, with Australia, the Americas. Is that the way forward? The cultural exchange plus a longer stint in another country?
Yes, that's a big part of it. So, I having just come off the Euros, Ernst, I'm sure you'll agree with me that one of the things that we miss from that particular European competition is that since 2017, they haven't had off-continent neutral umpires. So nobody from other continents, from Oceania, Asia, Pan Am's, have been invited, appointed to umpire at that tournament, which has led to some pretty uncomfortable situations when it comes to appointments, because you still have to respect national neutrality. And they are doing themselves a disservice by not inviting the umpires from outside. And they're also doing the international hockey community a disservice, because it would be so valuable for those folks to come over and gain that experience, and experience like true all European stuff. Now, since before I started international umpiring, we've had an agreement between PAF, the Pan Am Federation, and the Asian Federation. We exchange neutral appointments at our Pan Am Cup and our Pan Am Games. So we always have two neutral umpires from, at least from Asia. Sometimes we have a European. We used to back in the day, but I think it's now usually Asian umpires, and then vice versa. We go to the Asian Games, we go to the Asia Cup. And that has really produced, that's where our top umpires get a chance to progress to that world tier, to that next level. So it's precisely in those exchanges. And I understand the pro Europe, like, we're so strong and we're so great, but you need to split it around a little bit, because you need to have strong umpires from Asia who can umpire European top matches at world tournaments and give the game the service that you need. So that's, I think, a big part of it.
Mhm.
Well, Keely, I think we have reached the end here, Ernst, right?
Absolutely. We're talking over an hour already again. Keely is not one to have small conversations with, short conversations with.
Keely,
We almost did a Keely hour. We almost did 90 minutes. So good work.
Yeah.
you look as fresh as you started in the first minute and ready for another set of 100 questions, maybe, but we will we won't do that. We won't punish you with that. We will allow you to do the stuff that you have to do. But thank you so much for joining us. And I must say that you are one of the most colorful persons in the hockey family that I have known over the years. And I mean it when I say it, not just for the sake of saying. But thank you so much for joining us. It was really fun, really enlightening, really a lot of insights that you gave across topics, not just umpiring, but across hockey, right, Ernst?
Absolutely. Always fun talking to an umpire. So, Keely, thank you very much. Now, we enjoyed the talk. So, we got a little bit of backstory to both yourself and the umpiring pathways that exist. And the roads that maybe still need to be traveled there. But that was very interesting. So, thank you for sharing the time with us. Everybody here, thanks for listening to Studio Hockey. Make sure that you subscribe to our podcast so you will not miss out on our next episodes. Until next time, happy hockey.